Pro-life talk. Real world answers. This is Life Report.
Welcome to Life Report. I am your host, Josh Brom, and we are here again with Stephen Ertelt from lifenews.com to finish what I have no idea how controversial these two episodes are going to be. Part 2 of the list of Stephen Ertelt's 5 pro-life pet peeves.
Absolutely.
Number 3 is...
The third one is using polemic language to describe abortion or abortion proponents. And one of the ones that I see a lot, it's about President Obama, and it's understandable because let's just be real frank here. President Obama has a laundry list of things he's done to push abortion funding, put pro-abortion people in key positions to make policy decisions, both domestically, internationally. His best friends are Planned Parenthood, Obamacare. I mean, he put Obamacare together with Cecile Richards coming to the White House for private meetings, her staff, pro-abortion friends. I mean, he's buddy-buddy with Emily's List and with NARAL, and he's got pictures of himself hugging pro-abortion leaders and their best friends. So the honest answer is he's completely and totally, thoroughly pro-abortion. He's not even pro-choice. He pushes abortion strenuously. So that's the honest to God's truth. But when people come out and say, you know, I really wish President Obama had been aborted, then I think we're going beyond the pale, because it's understandable to be upset and frustrated and to be completely torqued for President Obama. That's completely understandable. His record's terrible. We're pro-life. Those things don't mesh. But we're pro-life people. We don't wish that he was aborted. Instead, we ought to be wishing that he was pro-life. That he was actually using, to borrow a terrible Spider-Man term or phrase, using his power for good. He should be using his power to advance the pro-life cause, to doing the kinds of things pro-life presidents have done by defunding abortion, by stopping abortion internationally, by making sure Planned Parenthood is not getting zillions of dollars in taxpayer funding, by doing all the great things presidents have and can do. That's what we ought to wish, not that he was actually one of the 57 million babies who have been victimized by abortion.
Yeah, look, the pro-life position is that we think abortion is wrong because it kills an innocent human being unjustifiably. I've got some more content on this. If you want, I've got a speech audio you can get on my website, joshbrom.com. It's called 9 Faulty Pro-Life Arguments and Tactics, and I talk a little bit about this, but I'll say, look, our position is not that abortion is wrong because it killed, good people that could have helped society or the future, the next Beethoven or the cure of cancer. That's not our argument. In fact, I think that argument plays into the pro-choice worldview, that humans are valuable because of what they offer to society or what they can do functionally. That's not our view.
They come back a lot. In fact, I've seen a lot of pro-choice people say, oh, what if the guy was a drug dealer? What if the guy was Hitler? What if the guy was something like that? The baby is what I mean. What if the baby turned out to be that person? Would you still, be opposed to abortion?
Yes. I don't want anybody getting killed. Yeah, if they become a drug dealer or they become a murderer or whatever, we deal with that then. If he becomes Hitler, we deal with that then. This is not Minority Report where we're trying to
killing people is not a solution.
Get ahead of time before they no. I mean, I heard someone say, if we had a time machine, boy, it'd be great if Hitler was aborted. And it's this is a pro-life leader. I'm not going to name names, but it's just okay, that's not our view.
No.
And clarity on that is really, really important if you're going to talk, correctly and accurately about this issue. Okay, number 4.
All right. Viewing small steps to protect life from abortion as compromising. I'll give you an example. Right now, there are bills that are pending in Congress and in state legislatures across the country that would ban abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy, based on the understanding that unborn children feel pain during an abortion. It's a way to educate people to show, hey, abortion is terrible for an unborn child because it's a painful thing for them. At some point. And so because it's understanding that Roe versus Wade doesn't allow us to ban abortion wholesale the way that we would like to. So we try to ban the abortions that we can ban, that the Supreme Court will let us ban. We started with partial birth abortion. We banned that particular procedure.
After 10 years.
After a lot of
10
fighting.
years to ban one procedure.
I know. It was such a difficult thing to try and get the ball moved that far down the road.
For a kid, that's 80% out of mom.
Exactly. So now we're trying to ban abortions after 20 weeks and getting to that and trying to move the the ball further down the road towards protecting every baby from abortion.
Right.
And so we posted stories about how these bills have been going through the state legislature. And in fact, actually just yesterday and today, I posted 2 stories about the states of West Virginia and Mississippi passing these bills. And as they go through the process, their state house or senate has passed the bill. And I posted the story about them, and I said, boy, these are good news. This is great news that more unborn babies will be protected under law, which is a good thing. So here are some of the responses I got to saying this is good news. One person had to say, and I again won't name names, "This is pathetic. What happens to the 19-week human babies and the least of them? It's not good news. It should be totally banned because it's still a human even though the baby is less than 20 weeks of age."
Well, we don't disagree on that.
We don't disagree on that. Obviously, it should be banned, but we're not able to ban those abortions right now. So we protect the babies that we can protect today, and then hopefully tomorrow protect those that we can protect tomorrow. 2 more comments. It's not good news. Good news would be abolishing murder. We agree murder is a bad thing. I don't think anybody's saying murder is a good thing. 20 weeks or 20 days, even 20 minutes is still murder. There's no good news here at all.
20 minutes, like post 20 minutes after conception?
I guess. It's an all or nothing thing, and it may be a sophomoric look at it. It may be philosophical or philosophy 101 in terms of how you look at it. But you go back to the old lifeboat scenario or the burning building scenario, and you go back to the question of, you can't save everybody. Do you just say, to heck with it, I can't save everybody? Or do you try to go in and save a couple of people from the burning building when you got 10 to save? And obviously you save the ones you can. And we talked about in part 1, and hopefully everybody watching part 2 watched part 1. But we explained in part 1 the difficulty of our political system in stopping abortion today. It has to be a piecemeal battle. And in fact, and I'll expand on what we talked about in part 1, not only will it take a long time to stop abortion, to end abortion, just by the nature of our political system, once we overturn Roe and once some states start banning abortions, it doesn't mean the battle's done. Because the other side is going to push back. Right now we have a pro-abortion movement that is pushing back on the Hyde Amendment, for example. Hyde Amendment's a modest thing. It doesn't even ban one abortion. All it does is simply say, don't use my taxpayer dollars to pay for those abortions, to kill babies with my money, which is a reasonable thing to do to stop that, but it's not even an abortion ban. And they're pushing back on that. They're trying to get the numbers in Congress. They want enough, they want to have control of the House and Senate and to get enough votes, because some Democrats are still pro-life, so they got to get the House and Senate and a lot more votes to try and repeal Hyde. They want us to have to pay for abortions again by taking the Hyde Amendment away, which some analysis have said have prevented or have saved, I should say, millions of babies who otherwise would have been aborted with our tax money. So they're going to push back when we ban abortions. Once Roe is gone and once states begin to protect babies before birth, they're going to push back and fight hard to stop that, to overturn that. Okay, say this particular state has banned abortion. They're going to want to try and take over the legislature and take over the governor's seat in that given state and make abortion legal again. So the battle doesn't stop. This is a lifelong, decades-long, generations-long battle to protect life. Even when we win, if you will, it's just the first step. It's just the beginning.
It's sometimes hard for me to figure out where groups are coming from, because there's some groups that are very, very inconsistent in how they apply their kind of pro-life philosophy. And I'm not going to name names, but there's certain groups, for example, that oppose the fetal pain bill federally, but not the state version, or the state version, but not federally, but it's the same bill. Mm-hmm. You had one group, their new leadership came in, and they did a press conference apologizing for all the incremental bills that they supported in the past, and they said, we will never, ever support another bill that you could end with and then you can kill the baby, because those are pro-choice bills, every one of them. But we will support 2 bills in the future. I love that they added, we're going to support a bill that would ban taxpayer funding of abortion.
And then you can kill the baby.
Right. And ban late-term abortions.
And then you can kill the baby.
Right, if it's younger. Answer this, because here would be the better argument.
Okay.
What I've heard some people say, okay, here's the problem with 20-week bans or fetal pain bans, or even bills that like were almost completely ban abortion but had a rape exception. Sure. They'll say it's super confusing for pro-choice people when they see pro-lifers supporting bills. It's like, if you support a bill with a rape exception, for example, then that's telling them that you really don't think that babies conceived from rape are actually human beings. You actually think that they're just
that's the criticism.
Like non-valuable, but then the babies that were conceived through consensual sex are babies. Do you think it's confusing to pro-choice people if a pro-life group was pushing an incrementalist bill that had an exception or cut the line off at a certain time point in fetal development, or do you think people understand how politics work?
I don't think it's confusing at all, because the whole pro-life ethic is to save every baby that we can. I mean, the whole pro-life ethic is because if you want to go back to sidewalk counseling, for example, you can talk about sidewalk counseling in the same breath to say, well, you're saving this one baby from being aborted by talking to this one woman who's considering an abortion and going to the clinic, but you're not going to save the next one. You can't save them all, or you can't be at every clinic in every city, in every state, all around the country. It's virtually impossible. But we have a moral obligation, I think, as pro-life people and as Christians, I would say, to do everything we can, knowing that we live in a failed human world where there is sin and there is free will and people make wrong decisions, knowing that there's never going to be perfection. The only perfection is found in Christ, and anybody who's looking for a political system to give them perfect answers to an imperfect world is looking in the wrong place. They need to be looking to a Savior to find perfection. And in a political world where you're talking about imperfection, you're talking about sin and sinful people making decisions, to how to fix society and run society based on man's decisions, not based on God's. Well, you give to Caesar what's Caesar's. You go with the flow. You understand the situation, and the situation is we can't ban all abortions immediately. You just can't. So you save every baby you can. Rape and incest, it's not authenticating rape and incest, abortions in those cases. It's not saying babies killed in rape and incest are any less people. Most pro-life people, and some don't, but most pro-life people are pro-life through and through, whether it's rape or incest or any other situation that might be used to justify an abortion. And so we need to be able to say, yes, that baby deserves to be protected and saved, but if we can't, let's save every baby we can and go back and save them when we can. And in Congress, it's a matter of the votes. We had a Hyde Amendment, and we talked about that earlier, that stopped taxpayer funding of abortions, where it did not include rape and incest exceptions. We eventually lost votes. It was a matter of, it was an all or nothing proposition. Either we give up the entire Hyde Amendment by insisting it have no rape and incest exceptions and lose the whole thing and fund every abortion, 100% of abortions, or we stop funding on 98% by reluctantly, not because we want them, but because we want to save. It's a providential value judgment based on what's the best we can get in a terrible situation. I had a pastor tell me one time, sometimes in a sinful situation, the only answers are sinful because there's no godliness. You know what I mean? And so in a terrible situation, if we have legal abortion, we want to at least stop taxpayer funding, but we can't stop it all. Let's stop everything we can.
It's triage.
It's absolutely
graduated
triage. You have to be.
It's just, you're going to go as far as you can.
Exactly.
But it's not like you stop there. It's like this idea that like if you pass
a
ban against 99% of abortions, and then suddenly you're going to give up on the one.
That's right.
I mean, South Dakota.
You go back and you fight just as hard for that one.
South Dakota was so close to their ban, like 10 years ago or whatever it was.
That's right.
And they didn't have the exception. They chose not to do, and then they did this whole campaign based on how abortion affects women. They didn't talk about the baby. They tried to change things up. I think that backfired on them, and then they lost. And in their post-polling, they find out if they'd had the rape exception, they actually would have passed. So they try again, 2 years later? Mm-hmm. They tried it with the rape exception, and they lost again. By this point, Planned Parenthood put so much ad money into it, like they got defeated by even more steps. And I remember talking to I'm not sure if they'd want me to quote them. So there was a pro-life organization. They wrote an article about it though, because I talked to them. Said there's a lot of people that are saying South Dakota, they're heroes. Or they're evil now because they did once they did the exception, they're evil. They were heroes before, even though they could have passed it the first time. And they put out an article with their view on it, with the best illustration I've ever seen in a pro-life article. There's a scales of justice, and on one side was babies, and on the other side was perfect Bill. And they just said, you know what? Good for them for trying their best the first
That's right.
time and then doing the next best thing the next time, and it's unfortunate they still lost. It's like, we're not going to give up.
Exactly. And this is the criticism. Oh, you don't care about babies conceived in rape or incest.
Or we're saying that
Ryan
they
Bomberger,
should
who was
be
conceived
killed.
in rape, is one of our writers at Life News. We absolutely, completely, with no qualms about it, just do not justify abortion in those cases and believe they are human beings worthy of legal protection. We absolutely will fight for them, and there's no compromise, no backing down, no endorsement of abortion in those situations in any way, shape, or form. Quite the contrary, the whole point is to get to that point where they are protected. And so if you can't protect them all, let's protect who we can, and then part B is you come back and you fight for those people because they're people who deserve protection.
Okay, so let me ask you a tough question.
Absolutely.
Are there any pro-life bills you'd be against?
Yeah, because it wouldn't be pro-life. And the exception would be the health exception. Because there have been bills that have been very narrowly drawn that have done, because the idea of pro-life legislation is to stop abortion. Okay, so let's go backwards and figure out, okay, why are we passing pro-life bills? Because we want to save babies from abortion. That's the start. That's the goal we want to reach. Okay, so if that's our goal, you want a bill that will at least save one baby from an abortion, preferably a whole lot more than that. And so if that's the idea, you want legislation that will accomplish that, not just speak to that, but actually do it. Now, we've had a lot of bills that have been drafted in a lot of different ways in a lot of legislatures, some that may have a life of the mother exception, some that may have rape and incest exceptions, some that may have physical deformity type exceptions, some that may have I know in Ohio, for example, they had a partial birth abortion bill that had a very, very narrowly drawn exception that wasn't a health exception, but it was essentially impairment of her body to the extent that she almost was killed, that she was a non-functioning individual from a medical standpoint because her body was so destroyed by some crazy, freaky situation where she had to have an abortion, which essentially is just appeasing the people on the left by saying, okay, we'll put it in there for you, because medically it's almost inconceivable, and most doctors would say it is inconceivable, and a lot of pro-lifers do. But it was drawn in such a way that it really wouldn't come into play, and it wasn't a health exception the way we know as pro-lifers a health exception to be gutting. Look at Doe versus Bolton, which is the very rarely mentioned companion case to Roe versus Wade. We talk about Roe all the time. We forget Doe, which essentially was the vehicle by which abortion was legalized or allowed wholesale. I mean, Roe kind of opened the door, if you will, and Doe threw it wide open and let everybody come in and drove the Mack truck through it. So when you have a health exception that guts a bill to the point that it doesn't actually stop any taxpayer funding of abortions, or it doesn't actually ban any abortions, or it doesn't actually provide for the true informed consent or true regulation in the sense of holding abortion clinics accountable for basic health and safety standards, when it guts the law to the effect that you're not saving babies or stopping taxpayer funding or holding the abortion industry accountable, then it's not a pro-life bill. So when you ask what kind of compromise can be accepted, it already is all or nothing, because you either have a bill that's going to accomplish something, it may not be perfect, but it will accomplish something, or it will accomplish nothing. So an abortion ban that has a health exception will ban no abortions. It already is all or nothing in the sense that it is nothing. It will not actually stop a single abortion if that health exception is in there. So if you have exceptions that are rare, that are very narrowly drawn, that are unfortunate, that nobody wants, but maybe politically all you can get, but will still accomplish something, that is a pro-life bill. Because you're talking about the Hyde Amendment, for example, even though it has rape and incest exceptions, unfortunately, you're talking about stopping 98% of taxpayer-funded abortions. That's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. When 100% is better, nobody is arguing 100% is not better. But 98 is pretty darn good. And we're going to take 98 versus 0.
And explain real quick, because you didn't really explain it. I think there's some people that might not understand. What is the difference between the standard life exception versus health exception?
Exactly.
What was in Doe?
Absolutely. Well, the life exception is a direct contravening of the woman's life by the pregnancy. There is some medical circumstance, and we can talk about that separately at some point, and a lot of pro-life doctors and people have, that there may not be any circumstance that is truly life-threatening for the mother. That's questionable. Some have said there are some have said there are others, and that's, you can do an entire life report on that, I know, and you may have. But a true situation where the pregnancy would directly result in the mother losing her life. And if we're pro-life, some people take that exception, a lot of people do, that, well, we don't want the mother to die. Doctors ought to take every effort to protect mother and child. Right. You have two patients. Right. But people can be understandable that, well, we don't want her to die, so we could theoretically visualize the circumstance where if she's going to die, we don't want to kill her, so we could understand the abortion at that point. Ectopic pregnancy is one, and I know that's an endless argument and debate, so I'll leave it there. A health exception is different. A health exception is where essentially the abortion doctor can find anything, a hangnail, whatever, something silly and stupid to justify an abortion. That's not medically authentic. Right. That's not medically legitimate. But in some way, we think she might be more depressed after having carrying the term rather than having the abortion. So medically, we think she should have the abortion. Her age, she's too old. I mean, you can come up with any, and that's the whole point of it's a door that's wide open, because any excuse, any justification from the abortion practitioner to do that abortion, any excuse can be made. And so it essentially allows for all abortions, because you can't find one that would be properly banned, because you can find any reason for any abortion. Right. She just is having a bad day, and it's just she's depressed. It's just the typical things that women go through during pregnancy: morning sickness, or you're feeling down, or whatever. Oh, well, she's sick. She's not feeling good. She's a little, feeling under the weather. She's got the blues, the baby blues. Those can be justifications. So clear differences between health and life. Number 5, the last one here in our list of 5 pet peeves that some pro-lifers do. We won't say all, because they don't all do that. Some pro-life groups and people attack other pro-life groups and people, and some of them will go as far as saying they are more pro-life than somebody else.
All right, so immediately someone's saying, you're a hypocrite. You just spent 2 episodes attacking pro-life people. What would you say to them?
No. As you have done on Life Report, one of the things we try to do is just improve how people do what they do when they're being pro-life, when they're arguing the issue, debating the issue, when they're talking to people who aren't pro-life, trying to change hearts and minds. It's one thing to encourage people to be consistently pro-life in their language, their actions, their thoughts. It's another thing to say, well, my strategy is better than yours, so you're not really pro-life.
Yeah.
Or because I like to do it this way and you like to do it that way, I'm more pro-life. Or I've actually seen this, and we won't name names. This is the no-name show. I've seen a pro-life organization, and it slayed me. Okay, usually. I won't do it on this show. How about that?
Okay.
I've seen a pro-life organization, and it absolutely surprised and shocked me, say, because we do what we do our way, and pregnancy centers do something differently that's maybe not as directly, although I would say they're super directly related to abortion, but it's not the way we do it. Our approach and the things we do as an organization, we are more pro-life than a pregnancy center. And I've seen pro-life groups say, because legislatively, this is our approach, this is our tact, and this organization does something we feel to be inferior, we are therefore more pro-life than them. And so it's different. It may be a different way, a different approach, but it's not more pro-life than the other. The pregnancy center that's ministering to a young girl who's pregnant and considering an abortion is no less pro-life than the sidewalk counselor outside the abortion clinic. The pro-life group that's doing its best to try and pass whatever bills that are possible to save babies is no less pro-life than the group that will only accept a quote-unquote perfect bill. And likewise, that group that only wants perfection, that doesn't want to settle or compromise or whatever word they want to use on these other bills that other people support, they're also no less pro-life. Just because they're not spending their time, money, and energy on things we're doing, it doesn't make them less pro-life. We have a different strategy, a different agenda. And who knows in the end what God will see fit to use to somehow, someday, protect unborn babies from abortion. And hopefully when that day comes, we won't engage in finger pointing of, aha, I was right and you were wrong. Hopefully we're all willing to just celebrate when babies are saved from abortion, whether it's a pregnancy center, whether it's somebody, Eric Scheidler's group, and their signs on the streets, and somebody decides to change their mind. Praise God. The organization that is taking the message to schools, or a legislative group, or an educational group, whatever it is, whoever it is that's trying to stop abortion and save lives, we're all in this together and we're all on the same team.
And when you use the word pro-life, I assume basically you mean we have this agreement that abortion should not be legal because it kills human beings. I'm assuming, because we've had so many conversations, you don't think every pro-life kind of tactic or activism technique or strategy is equally effective. That's not what you're saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying. And it's okay to believe that something is more effective than the other. It's not okay to say, well, because I do it this way, you're not as pro-life as me, you're not as Christian as me, you're not as whatever as me. Because, again, and we go back to part one where we talked about women who have had abortions, we've all sinned. We've all fallen short. Nobody's got it together. Right. We're all missing it somewhere. Jesus is the only perfect standard. Right. So unless we're Christ, and none of us are, we're all failing. We're all not going to be 100% right or perfect. We all are going to get to heaven, those of us who are Christians someday, and we're going to be disabused of a few things. God's going to say, you know what, you were wrong on this. And he's going to tell me that, and he's going to tell you that. He's going to tell all of us that, and we're all going to figure out how we were messed up in some way, shape, or form, and we're all just going to praise God for the glory that he was able to restore us and make us perfect.
So you think there's value in having conversations like this, trying to even make an argument for doing some kind of activism techniques or maybe styles of communication more than others because effectiveness matters? You think it's okay to say, okay, there's some groups, maybe we won't name them, that do these things, and we're concerned about that, and here's why. That's fine as long as you're not going the extra step of saying they're not as pro-life as you are because they're doing X and you're doing Y.
This is the biggest issue humanity's ever faced, killing people before birth. You can't talk about poverty, you can't talk about homelessness, you can't talk about tax policy or international issues or a country's military invading another if you've been killed before you've even had a chance to live 1 minute after birth. Obviously, we're alive before birth, but to be here on earth to experience any of those things, if we're killed before birth, you're never going to be poor. You're never going to face homelessness. Those are terrible issues that we need to address, but abortion is the human rights issue of our time, I truly believe. So it's worth it. It matters. We need to be effective in saving lives because it's so crucial. It's such an important thing to be doing, to saving these lives, to help people, whether it's not just the unborn child, but the women who are having abortions, the families who are impacted, the fathers who are forgotten so many times. It matters to so many people. So many human beings are affected by this, their relationship with God, their relationship with other people. It matters so importantly that we want to do a good job. We need to be able to convince people effectively to become pro-life, to change the laws, to end abortion. It all impacts on itself. So if you're effective in changing hearts and minds, you're effective in reaching people with the pro-life message, you're going to reach people who are eventually going to talk somebody out of an abortion. You're going to reach people who are going to vote for the right person and pass the right pro-life law. You're going to reach somebody who's going to be the next volunteer at your pregnancy center or your pro-life group. So it matters to be effective. It matters to those who are affected by it.
Stephen Ertelt is the founder and editor of LifeNews.com. Thank you so much for being so gracious with your time. I'm so glad we're able to do this. Remember, if you want to have a good impact on conversations, you can do that by asking good questions, finding common ground when possible, and listening to understand. You can check out this episode and all the show notes at prolifepodcast.net. Have a great week. Now go talk to someone.
You've been watching Life Report, Pro-Life Talk, Real World Answers. Life Report is produced by Right to Life of Central California. Visit their website at fresnoprolife.org.